exactly one of the other disorders, but there's something not quite right. So what we're mostly going to focus on, I guess we're going to hit some of these, but we're mostly going to focus on autism spectrum disorder. So we're going to talk about autism and Asperger's syndrome. Okay, so we thought it was pretty cool that the ADHD group did a little video. So we are going to give you a video about what it's like to be someone with autism spectrum disorder.
Right now, as you sit in this room, it's very easy for you to focus on my voice and understand every word that I'm saying. For you, it's the only noise in the room. This is not how children with autism hear. They hear everything. Sounds that you may not even notice they hear. And they hear them all at the same volume. So as you listen to and are able to focus on my voice, they hear the fan blowing. They hear doors closing. They hear the waitstaff clearing tables. They hear the woman 10 feet away rummaging through her purse. They hear a fire truck outside. They hear people walking to their seats. They hear someone pouring a glass of water. They hear the wind. They hear a car alarm going off. They hear someone coughing. They hear a cell phone ringing. They hear a baby crying. If this is what your world sounded like every minute of every day, what would you do to cope? Would you run? Would you scream? Would you rock back and forth? Would you fight to get away? Would you jump up and down and flap your hands? Would you bite your cheek until it bled? Would you hit yourself in the head? What would you do to make it stop? What would you do to make it stop? Our kids are always doing the best that they can, always, to cope with a world that they simply don't hear the same way that we do.
Okay. So I found that video to be very eye-opening, especially when she talked about what would you do to make it stop. Would you? I think I would be losing it. I would be doing whatever I could to try to make those things stop in my own head. So, autism. A developmental disability affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction. This starts appearing in the first 3 years of life, so they'll be able to see signs in the development of infancy and throughout those early stages of learning. And they're things that greatly affect a child's performance in their social interaction, communication, stereotypical behavior, and then obviously the onset before the age of 3. So some of the things in their social interaction, they're not going to take social cues the way that we do. They don't understand, or may not, I'm not going to say everyone, but some of them may not understand what you do when someone says hi to you, or how you respond to a question, or anything like that. The same thing with communication. It all falls into the same category. And then the stereotypical behavior, so like they talked about in the video, the flopping the arms when they walk, or banging your head, or she talked about biting their cheek, or just screaming out of nowhere. Those are some of the stereotypical behaviors. So, as we said before with the PDD and ASD disorders, they're usually shown in language and personal and social behavior. So those are the places that it's going to come out. So it's not something you're going to necessarily see on their face or see in a physical disability, but you can see from what they do what is going on inside of them. So,
So Asperger's syndrome is pretty similar to autism, and sometimes they're really hard to identify like the differences between them. And so just the definition: serious impairments in social skills, abstract thinking, and the ability to relate and identify emotions. And so they often have normal IQ and may have extensive verbal abilities. And so these people might even have a really high vocabulary, or it's just less noticeable sometimes. distraction and hearing everything that's going on. And then repetitive motor movements like the tapping or the biting or things like that.
Rett syndrome is another one that falls under the pervasive developmental disorders. So it's similar to the autism and the Asperger's. We're just going to hit it briefly. So you'll see normal development the first 5 months of their life. And then usually from the 5 months to 18-month range, they say these things start to develop. So deceleration of head growth, so that's more of a physical sign that might happen. Loss of hand skills, so whether it be writing or picking things up, they're losing their skills of using their hands. Loss of social engagement, so they're maybe in that 5 months, they're not even cued in on parents. We talk about those steps in infancy that children are supposed to take with being cued in on their parents' voices and language development and those kinds of things. Those are going to start to diminish. And then the same, severely impaired receptive and expressive communication. So they're not, that communication factor just starts to plummet. Okay. So, these are just characteristics of the autism spectrum disorders. All things that we've said already. Difficulty interpreting social cues. You say hello, I say what, or, you know. Difficulty seeing things from another person's perspective. So, with all those things that are going on in their head, they're trying to figure out what they're doing and then trying to relate to you. How am I supposed to try to relate to you when I'm trying to figure out what's going on here, you know? They just can't grasp what's going on in someone else's head and standing in their feet. There could be a lack of verbalization. That doesn't necessarily mean that students don't have any vocabulary. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it means they haven't developed that vocabulary because they haven't used it. They aren't communicating. But it also talked about a lot of students who have very extensive vocabulary. They're very skilled in that area of language, but they just don't know how to communicate. Or they can't last long enough in a conversation to be able to communicate those things. I didn't even look up the pronunciation of this word. Do you have a?
Yeah, it's echolalia.
Echolalia. So this would be repeating things that are heard. So if you have spent time with an autistic child, or even like seen movies with a child with autism, there's going to be, you say something, they say it. Just repeating what is heard. As we said before, mild language delays and struggle communicating. And then there's the repetitive behaviors and routines.
So for your classroom preference assessment, so you have to assess them for what they might prefer to learn by and try and assess them because all the students are going to be different, they're not going to learn the same. And for a classroom routine, you have to make sure that the students' heights and their low preference activities are considered. So if there's an activity you prefer over another one, that you try and consider that if you can have that activity placed into your day. Incorporate neutral activities for transition, so activities that aren't too difficult or aren't too easy for transitioning them from one level to the next. Involving your students in creating the schedule, because they like to be able to create their own schedule and they like to have a very set schedule. I had a cousin who has autism and he would do the same exact schedule every day. He would wake up, he'd do his chores, he'd watch some TV, he'd play outside. He had his same schedule, and so he had a say in that, and it makes them feel like they have more control and that they're not being told what to do all the time. And you have to teach them the communication skills. As Lauren was saying, a lot of them do not have all the communication skills and language skills that we do as individuals without disabilities. And you have to make it a part of their natural learning environment so it doesn't feel like you're teaching them outside of what they would normally learn, or that they're being taught specially because they're different than the other students, but that it's a part of your everyday classroom. And the mass trial strategies are where you're trying to get your trials together, and it's a bunch of trials that have worked together to find out the best way to teach this. Provide reinforcement and rewards based on their preferences. So like Preferential just talked about before, you want positive reinforcement so that they know that they're doing well and that they're progressing, and not only saying that they need to work on something else or that they're not doing as well as they should be. And a communication progress report. You can have like the green card for if they're doing well in a certain area, yellow if they need more help, and red if there's problems and there needs to be more work done in that area.
Or a communication board could even be a board of pictures to help them get across what they're trying to say to you. So a picture of the toilet, I have to go to the bathroom. Or, you know, et cetera. Like I need a pencil. I'm really hungry right now. So those kinds of things just to help eliminate the, I mean, you still want them to practice those social skills, but at the same time, sometimes it just doesn't happen. So having that tool to help you in your classroom.
I tutored an autistic boy last year, and the first time that we met together was just crazy. Like he's pretty mild, but like I could not get him to focus at all, and so I talked to Prof. Stiff about it, and I made like a schedule and I paired pictures with it, like the text says, and so it would be like first 15 minutes read, next 15 minutes math facts, and so even though it was just an hour, like we planned like next 10 minutes this or that homework or whatever it was, and I like reviewed it with his parents too, and so they were able to like edit it and send it back to me and let me know what they wanted him to do, like more homework or more math facts or whatever he was struggling with. And so then it was like at the end he had 10 minutes, or actually it was 5 minutes of whatever he wanted to do. But even there I had to write like computer games or read a book, like because I couldn't just say anything because it was still too broad. Like it was like, oh, like let's run around the library or whatever it was. And so it really does help. Like he really did do really well. Once we just had a schedule, he just couldn't function without the schedule.
And to add just to the whole routine, you guys are gonna laugh at me, but I watched an Arthur clip. How many of you seen Arthur? Yes. Great show, right? So George, who's like the moose, I guess. George is a moose, and he is all about his puppet. George has a friend who has Asperger's syndrome, so he goes to visit him and brings his puppet, and the child's mom steps out of the room, and George pulls out his puppet, and this kid freaks out because it's something that's so unfamiliar. So that's where, I mean, that's a little bit of an extreme. It's not like you're going to bring a talking puppet into your classroom. But if you do, consider the fact that students are not familiar with that. Like, what is happening right now? I do not know what that is. This is not my routine. So keeping that routine and making sure students are prepared for what's going to happen in the classroom.
And for teaching strategies, one of the ones I found that seemed to be really helpful was work systems. And they define this as an organizational system that provides your students with visual information about what to do. So it's kind of like a to-do list, and as we were saying before, it's very scheduled and they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And the questions it answers is what is the task or activity they're supposed to complete, and the amount of work required for the period, or how long will that activity last. How will the student know what kind of progress they're making, and what is next after that. So it kind of lets them know what exactly they're supposed to be doing at each point in the class. So you don't just give them an assignment and they're not sure if they're supposed to do that then, if they're supposed to do that at home, if they're supposed to do anything after that. And the teachers can then outline what's going